Good afternoon. It's Monday, the 5th of January. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas is vowing that his government will resubmit its statehood bid to the United Nations Security Council that calls for Israel to withdraw to the pre-1967 lines by the end of 2017. Speaking in Ramallah yesterday, Abbas accused the UNSC of letting the Palestinians down after last week's vote on the issue fell short of gaining approval from the 9 member states required for it to pass. Abbas said that the Palestinians weren't to blame for the failure of the resolution to pass, but that the Council failed the Palestinians, and promised to repeatedly refile the proposal to the Security Council until it is passed, even if it takes another 3 or 4 submissions. Palestinian negotiator Saeb Erekat says that the steps taken by the Palestinians to force Israel to recognize a two-state solution are peaceful. The remarks came in the aftermath of the Israeli cabinet decision to freeze the transfer of monthly tax revenues to the Palestinian Authority in response to unilateral actions taken by the PA, including applications for membership at the International Criminal Court and other United Nations organizations. Jerusalem is warning that the prosecution of Palestinian officials on charges of war crimes is also under consideration. IBA's Margot Dukevich spoke with Erekat earlier today about the Palestinians' plans to submit another statehood bid in this exclusive telephone interview.
We will have an Arab follow-up ministerial meeting towards after the middle of this month, and this subject will be discussed. And if we will move in accordance with the decision taken by this ministerial follow-up committee of the Arab foreign ministers.
Now, already the Palestinian Authority has submitted applications to become members of the ICC and other organizations. What do you hope to achieve by this move?
We hope to defend ourselves. We hope to tell the Israeli government that status quo no more. Enough is enough. We have been negotiating with you for 20 years. We seek to have the two-state solution. A state of Palestine to live side by side the state of Israel on the 1967 line. You have left us no options. You destroyed the agreement signed. You erased from the agreement Area A, B. You left us with no territorial jurisdiction, legal jurisdiction, security jurisdiction, functional jurisdiction, and status quo no more. If the Prime Minister of Israel thinks that he can maintain a Palestinian Authority without an authority and a cost-free occupation, he's wrong. We are doing everything peacefully, and I reiterate and stress that, knocking the doors of the Security Council, the ICC, other conventions, these are peaceful means in accordance with international law. We're telling our people, don't despair. Through peaceful means, through the international law, we shall achieve our goal to end this Israeli occupation and to establish our independent state on the 1967 lines.
Now, not only Israel but also the US have harshly criticized the Palestinian Authority for taking unilateral steps instead of negotiating a deal with Israel. And yesterday Israel announced it was freezing the monthly tax revenue funds that it usually transfers to you. What effect will this have on the Palestinian Authority?
Well, number one, I think this is Palestinian money. Israel is not a donor country. This is not a charity from Israel. Israel collects our taxes and customs revenues for us, and they take 3% surcharge for that. So the Israeli decision to withhold our funds means that they want to destroy our hospitals and close them, our schools, because when we are unable to pay companies that get us the medical supplies, we are unable to pay salaries, people will not be able to take milk to their homes or pay tuition fees for their children or hospital bills for their mothers, whatever. So if the Israeli government thinks they can collapse the Palestinian Authority, no. We may have a meeting very soon and call upon Mr. Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, to resume his responsibilities as an occupying power to the full extent of it. We're not threatening anyone. We will not be put on our knees because our freedom and independence will not be traded for this pressure or that pressure from anyone. We hope that the Israeli public, they have a chance in the next elections, that they will elect those who will take Palestinians as their neighbors and will stop being the occupiers. Occupiers is a miserable situation, is a disastrous situation for Palestinians and Israelis. It's time to move genuinely towards specifying a timeline for the two-state solution.
There has been another plethora of political developments today as police follow the Israel Beitenu money trail. Likud has trouble counting its primary votes. Aryeh Deri hints at the comeback that everyone expected, and Moshe Kachlon plays the woman card. More from IBA's political correspondent Eli Wogelenter.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will officially launch his Likud party's general elections campaign at a large gathering of Likud activists tonight in Tel Aviv. Following the party primary last week, Netanyahu will present his plans for his coming term as prime minister if he receives the mandate to form the next government after the March 17th elections. The prime minister plans to present the new Likud list running for the Knesset, but first, the list has to be finalized. A recount conducted yesterday led to a change in the final list and to narrowing the gap between the candidates for the 20th spot. In the latest development, Deputy Minister Tzipi Hotovely trails Avi Dichter by 55 votes in the recount and is asking for proof of the protocol signatories for the ballot boxes. A partial recount of the Likud primary votes proved to be beneficial for MKs Danny Danon and Yariv Levin, but it left Hotovely in the same 26th slot. Danon and Levin moved from the 10th and 12th spots, respectively, to 9th and 10th on the party list. Tzachi Hanegbi dropped down 3 spots from 9th to 12th after the recount. Turning to the Haredi party Shas, and to nobody's great surprise, former chairman Aryeh Deri signaled last night that he will likely return to politics just 5 days after he resigned his Knesset seat. Deri initially denied he was mulling an imminent return to the helm of Shas, but after being pressed by the Channel 2 interviewer, Deri indicated that a comeback was not out of the question. A man who does not change his mind and does not listen to the will of others is not a real man. He is an ass, Deri said. Deri also accused political rival Eli Yishai, who broke away from the party last month and founded a new party, of leaking the tape showing the late Rabbi Ovadia Yosef slamming Deri, leading to his resignation. Moshe Kachlon, chairman of the brand new Kulanu party, has recruited the first woman to join his list in the upcoming elections, former deputy mayor of Kiryat Shmona, Dr. Yifat Biton. Biton, who has her doctorate in education, joins 2 others running on the Kulanu list, chairman of the party, War on Poverty, Eli Lalalouf, and former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Michael Oren. More names to come. And there's a new entry into politics, and yet another journalist. TV personality Sharon Gal threw his hat into the political ring yesterday, announcing plans to run for a Knesset seat in March with the embattled Yisrael Beitenu party. The 40-year-old Gal hosted an economics program on Channel 10 for a decade before leaving in 2013 amid allegations of sexual impropriety and harassment, though the case was eventually dropped by police due to lack of evidence. Gal said that the connection between him and party head Avigdor Lieberman is ideological because the conflict is not the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but between Israel and the Arab world. A true settlement will only be reached with land and population exchanges. Overall, close to 20 former journalists and media personalities will run in the March 17th election in various parties along the political spectrum. And finally, Meretz chairwoman MK Zahava Galon has been elected by the Central Committee for another term as faction head. Galon, who ran unopposed, called upon party leaders to take it upon themselves not to sit in a Netanyahu-led government in order not to repeat the same resounding failure. The 1,000-member Central Committee members will elect the Meretz list for the next Knesset on January 19th. Turning now to the ongoing police probe in what is called the Yisrael Beitenu investigation, and it seems that the corruption case that has brought Avigdor Lieberman's party crashing to the ground continues to grow and seems about to reach its end. Police investigators have announced they are ready to issue initial indictment recommendations against Faina Kirschenbaum after 2 million shekels were discovered in her bank account. Kirschenbaum is yet to be taken into custody because of her immunity as a member of Knesset. Police are investigating the possibility that Kirschenbaum used Russian-language newspapers and polling companies to launder funds she received in the expanded bribery and money laundering scandal. Kirschenbaum allegedly demanded that the large sums of money she gave the anti-drug authority be allocated for advertising in the Russian media. Investigators announced that they also discovered 13 million shekels in the bank account belonging to Yisrael Yehoshua, a lobbyist and associate of Lieberman. 32 people have been arrested in the case so far, and 103 have been questioned. The scandal revolves around no fewer than 16 separate cases, with Kirschenbaum linked to 9 or 10 of them. Aaron?
Thanks for those reports. And in other news, the Prison Service Parole Board today agreed to knock off 1/3 of the 11-month sentence handed down to Shula Zaken. Former Prime Minister Ehud Olmert's bureau chief is now set to be released on January 26th after spending 7 months behind bars at the Neve Tirza Women's Prison. She began her term in July after being convicted and being found guilty of fraud, bribery, and breach of trust in connection with the Holy Land real estate scandal. Zaken received a lighter sentence than her convicted co-defendants after she took a plea bargain deal in exchange for testifying against her former boss and providing incriminating tapes to the court that assisted the prosecution in its efforts to retry Olmert in connection with the Talansky bribery affair and the filing of a new indictment against the former prime minister for obstruction of justice. The parole board said that its determinations for shortening Zaken's sentence will be published in a few days' time. The IDF has withdrawn troops from a number of Israeli communities near the Gaza Strip, but will continue to maintain a presence in Nahal Oz, Nativ HaAsara, and Kerem Shalom. The troops have been stationed in the southern community since the end of the summer's Operation Protective Edge. The Army announced its intention to redeploy the troops last week, although the move was postponed to yesterday. Eshkol Regional Council head Chaim Yellen blasted the decision and said that the soldiers' removal is disconnected from reality. Saying that the residents need to feel secure, he said that new barriers along the Gaza border should have been erected before the troops were pulled out. 3 members of an Islamic State cell operating in Hebron have been indicted by the Judea Military Court for plotting terror attacks. Details released for publication yesterday identified the suspects as 22-year-old Ahmed Shahada, 21-year-old Mohammed Zaro, and 23-year-old Kasai Masawada. They were arrested by the Shin Bet Security Service and IDF forces in November and have reportedly confessed to conspiring to carrying out attacks against Israelis, including the murder of a soldier to steal his uniform and weapon to perpetrate additional terror attacks. Shahada admitted to setting up the Islamic State-affiliated cell last summer and to having assembled a number of bombs to be used in the attacks. Security forces say that support for ISIS in the West Bank does remain marginal. Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon have agreed to divert 70 million shekels from the defense budget to cover the costs of transferring a border police base that will free up the site for the building of 300 new housing units in the settlement of Beit El. According to details reported by Channel 10 last night, the Prime Minister promised to reimburse the settlers 2 years ago for their agreement to evacuate 5 buildings in the illegal Givat Ol-Pana neighborhood of the settlement near Ramallah. Housing Minister Uri Ariel pushed for the transfer back in November, but then Finance Minister Yair Lapid blocked the proposal, saying that the expenditure should be decided on by the government publicly and was not a matter for the Prime Minister to decide on his own. The Summit Fuel Choices was held here in the country last week, bringing together startups, potential investors, and policymakers in the fields of alternative fuels and smart transportation. Here are some of the highlights brought to us from Arut Sheva.
The tilt boarder is a surfer. It's a surfer for everyday use. It drives on any kind of surface, starting from pavements to any kinds of off-board, terrain surface.
Do you need to know how to surf to get on this?
Sure, I mean, it's easy to learn. Even if you don't know how to surf, you can surf it. It's not that difficult.
Do you think that we're going to see some of these things on the streets in the near future?
I mean, wait for the revolution. You're going to see it everywhere. It's easier, it's lighter, it's more compact, it's not that expensive. Why not?
What we see here is a three-wheeler scooter that enables you to transform in the urban places in safe way and very stable. We are talking about a scooter that, when the other functionality of this kind of scooter is to become a trolley. You don't need to carry this weight, you just troll it along the city.
So this is the scooter. What are we seeing here behind you?
Here we see an extended feature of the folding scooter. We can stock several scooters, one on top of each other, and get a vending machine that's spread along the city, and you just pass on your credit card. Where would you like to take it? Where would you like to return it? And take the scooter along with you near the train station or bus stations or along the city.
This is the software, the technology. It's the suspension inside a wheel, which is symmetrical and selective. That means most of the time the hub doesn't move and it stays like a rigid wheel, very efficient, 20% more efficient than the suspended wheels. And when you encounter a curb or a pothole, then the hub shifts and it absorbs all of the energy, or at least more than 50% of the energy of the impact, and makes the ride comfortable.
We're presenting a novel technology for producing hydrogen using aluminum powder in combination with water.
Now, what is the meaning? What is the consequences of something like this?
Well, first of all, hydrogen is the ultimate fuel. It has much higher energy density than common fuels, and it's abundant. It's also, the process is green, it's environment friendly, and the efficiency of the process is much higher than alternatives.
The significance of what we see here today, it's part of a long process that the government basically entered into about 3 years ago. The idea is that the world suffers from the dependence on oil, and we have to find ways to replace that oil in transportation, whether it's from the economic point of view, whether it's from the environmental point of view, or whether it's from the geopolitical point of view. What we try to do today and for the last couple of years is basically to foster innovation in that respect, and to turn Israel into a center and to a catalyst for the world to replace oil.
Anti-Israel activity on U.S. college campuses is as big a threat to Israel as is Iran. That's the view of visiting pro-Israel activist Justin Hayet of New York's Binghamton University, whose writings on the issue have appeared in the Jerusalem Post and the Times of Israel. Justin now joins us from our Tel Aviv studio. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in. Tell us why you believe this kind of anti-Israel activity poses an existential threat to the state.
I think if many Israelis and many Jews worldwide saw what college students like myself and thousands of others have been dealing with on college campuses, you'd see the parallel between the activities and the rhetoric of organizations like Hamas and ISIS and Hezbollah, and you'd see the parallel on college campuses where students are literally being pressured to not support Israel and to draw Israel off a map, as many graduate students do in the classroom. And so if you're a student, how can you argue with a map? How can you argue with a graduate student? Or how can you argue with someone with such a strong view on an issue they literally know nothing about?
Now, most of our staff here at IBA News has spent years on American college campuses before we came to live in Israel. And our editor, Steve Leibowitz, was such an activist who says that in his day, during the early 1970s, he had to deal with the SDS, the Students for a Democratic Society movement, as well as the Black Panthers and other anti-Israel groups. Do you really think that the environment is that much worse today?
I do. We live in a global world where their articles and their rhetoric can be seen globally, just as ours can be seen globally on the pro-Israel side. But still, there's this constant need to delegitimize the Jewish state. And we have to realize that if students grow up on a campus and in an academic community where the Jewish state existence is even being questioned, we have to take note of that. And that's a catastrophic failure if we don't combat it. But there are incredible organizations like Camera, Stand With Us, and Jerusalem U doing incredible work to make sure that when the delegitimization campaign continues, which it will, that there's a strong voice on the other side, and there's activists to make sure that these strong lies are combated with the truth, which is our biggest ally. But still, what happens on college campuses is one day going to turn into the U.S. electorate, and one day into next senators and hopefully not president. But still, it's a huge issue, and we need to take it seriously, because if we don't take it seriously, I believe the Jewish state's at risk.
Now, England and France certainly have been experiencing a rise in anti-Semitism as of late, and some European governments have also been critical of Israel. But in the U.S., public opinion is certainly the Congress still remain very pro-Israel. So is this to the depth of the concern that you're expressing in the United States?
Well, I think that many anti-Israel activists see, the Jewish lobby, the pro-Israel lobby as this strong, big guy that they want to take down. And so we can't take the support of Congress for granted, and we have to realize that there are people who think that this is a catastrophic failure on American foreign policy, and so we have to continue to fight, and we can't just say, oh, well, for the past however many years, people have been pro-Israel who have been in positions of power. We have to take this head on, and we have to do so with the facts, and I believe that the organized Jewish community and pro-Israel community is doing a great job, but we're definitely not wholesomely winning. We have to plow ahead.
Justin Hayat, thanks very much for being our guest on IBA News this afternoon, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Turning now to sports and basketball, where Hapoel Tel Aviv got off to a winning start in the team's first game at its new Arik Einstein Arena. 3,500 fans packed the hall as the local hoopsters crushed the slumping visitors from Hapoel Jerusalem 81-67. MVP Yancey Gates was superb for the victors with 32 points and 9 rebounds. Gates told Israel Television sports reporter Liav Nachmani that he gives credit for the win to the fans.
Oh, no. The fans were hot tonight, and I just fed off of them. That's it.
So, give us a few words about your new arena.
I love it. I love the fans. I'm happy for the fans to finally have their own place, and it's just exciting to be a part of it.
Thank you very much. Go celebrate.
Thank you.
Traveling 40 kilometers per hour and going through red lights, drivers in Herzliya were rather surprised by an emu that suddenly appeared running alongside their cars on a busy thoroughfare. One eyewitness reported that the large flightless bird did seem to be aware that he should stay on the right side of the road. Fortunately, motorists took care not to hit the emu as it zigzagged between the lanes, and after several attempts, it was captured on the lawn of a nearby shopping center by 2 members of the city's veterinary department. The Nature and Parks Authority is investigating the incident. Emus are native to Australia and Tasmania, and the local roadrunner is believed to have escaped from an unregistered farm somewhere in the center of the country. Now taking a look at local finance, and the shekel today put in a mixed performance, as did share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. Here's a look at the afternoon numbers. Turning to the weather, and meteorologists are forecasting the possibility of snow at high altitude areas of the country on Wednesday, prompting many residents to already stock up on supplies and municipalities to undertake preparations for what many are jokingly calling the coming snowpocalypse. IBA's Ario Sullivan braved today's rather mild elements to bring us this report.
The snowstorm is heading this way. In the meantime, the Hermon is already being dusted in a snowy powder. And so far, about 5 centimeters of snow has accumulated on the ground at the lower cable car station, and managers of the slope hope that by Tuesday there will be enough to enjoy the winter sports of skiing, snowboarding, and tobogganing. But in the capital, Jerusalem is making preparations for Mother Nature's worst. Firefighters have bolstered their ranks and are fitting out their engines with new steel snow chains after the equipment from last year was destroyed during the megastorm. This firefighter says they are ready to deal with collapsed trees on electricity lines, cars, and buildings. The Jerusalem municipality is busy planning to clear the capital's main roads to prevent a repeat of those convoys of vehicles under snowdrifts that kept people stranded in their cars for hours or abandoned. The city has some 30 snowplows, but they'll be aided by tractors and jeeps, and will also be able to call upon the Israel Defense Forces if necessary. Dozens of tractors are ready to spread out some 40 tons of ice-melting salt if the order is given. Meanwhile, folks are stocking up on supplies, making sure they have the essentials because the memory of last year's storm, which shut down the city for days, still lingers. Ariel O'Sullivan for IBA News.
Tomorrow we're likely to see rain showers throughout much of the country, strong winds causing hazy conditions and sandstorms in the south, and the likelihood of snow falling on Mount Hermon and the northern peaks toward nightfall. Here's a look at the expected temperatures here at home and abroad over the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. I'll be back tomorrow. Hope to see you then. I'm Erin Viner, wishing you a great evening, and shalom from Jerusalem.